What's going on, everybody? LYH Tutorials back here with another video. We're going to look at how to make big style diagrams for your concept drawings. Now these diagrams are super important for any type of presentations on what your concept is and how you got to what your form looks like. So we're going to go over how to make these super simple yet super clear diagrams that Big makes, and we're just going to use Rhino 6 as well as Illustrator in order to accomplish this goal. So we're going to begin by going into Google and then taking an image off Google Maps. So if you have a design site and you have a context, I suggest going onto Google or whatever maps that you use and actually taking a screenshot of its surroundings as well as your site. So if my site is right here, I'm going to take a surrounding of maybe two blocks, and a block north and south, and east and west, 2 blocks maybe. But it's totally up to you how many blocks you want to do for your context. So after you've done that, you can simply drag the image into Rhino and import it as a picture, or you can go in here and use the import, anything that works for you, as long as we have a picture for reference in order to build our context here. Now make sure that your picture is in its own layer, just because we can lock it and so it doesn't kind of move around everywhere like this. So make sure to have it in its own layer, and we're going to lock it up. Now what I began to do after I get the picture in is I had to draw the streets in. What I've done is basically have these lines, drawing the streets in like this, and I've just done that for most of the streets that I want. And it's turned out something like this. So I have the different blocks that I needed, and I've simply made them into a surface, one single surface for all the streets that I wanted for my context. Okay, and then after you have all the streets done, we can go ahead and use our rectangle tool and just mark out some of these buildings here. Okay, they don't have to be exact because they're our context buildings. We don't really need too much detail on them. They're definitely not the focus, and we don't want them stealing attention from our actual design. So just have really simple rectangles like this, just to show what the context is like around our site. Okay, now we're gonna extrude these to have the approximate height of each one of the buildings. Now you can do this by going onto Google Earth, Google Map, anything that's 3D. You can kind of tell how many stories they are, and by that you can multiply that by a different height. Now since mine is kind of a made-up scenario, I'm just gonna do an arbitrary amount. I think in this case we did extrude the curve by 75 millimeters, and say that's a 2-story building. But it is up to you and your site and your context how tall these buildings are. So make sure you guys just get an approximate of how tall these buildings are. If you have to count the floors, go for it. But once you have that done, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete all of these because I have these done. Oh, that's not it. So once we have all these done, we're ready to kind of hop into our design site and just have our design implemented into the site and how we got to the design. We're gonna switch off the pictures layer here and say this is my site right here. And for the first step, maybe I'll just maximize every parameter. So FAR is how many stories I can have, just maximize how much I can have on the site here. So I basically just made a nice little block to exemplify that. And for the next few steps, we really want to make copies of each one because we'll need a drawing for each step. So we'll need a copy of the actual model for each step as well. Now, how I like to do this, and this is totally up to you guys, is I just like to drag it to the side, maybe by 3000, just so I have a copy of this and I know that if I wanted to move it back into place, I can do that. But this is step one. We're just going to maximize all site parameters here. For example, if I want step 2 to be a simple cut, I'm just gonna make a new layer here and title it concept. And we're gonna change that to maybe a nice lavender. So if I want a nice cut, something maybe, oh, I need to switch to this layer. Something maybe along the lines of this. I'm just gonna planar surface that really quickly. We're gonna move this over and tilt it maybe 45 degrees, like that. And then we're gonna move it a little bit so it's a nice cut like that. So if I want just this cut here, then I'm gonna go ahead and use this to trim away this part and use the original box to trim away this part, making our nice little cut just a nice little 45-degree slant in order to have a little bit of a more unique form. So we go ahead and join these two. And yeah, that'll be step 2. And then we're gonna make a copy of this on the side, and we're just gonna make it to the left here. Just don't know how much it takes to move it back. It'll be 3,000 units. And let's just make one more step for our little building here. Let's make a little courtyard. So I'm gonna switch over to wireframe view. I did Control, Alt, and W for wireframe. And we're gonna make a central courtyard here for our building. Hop over to top view. And we're just gonna make a nice courtyard like that. And we're gonna go ahead and extrude this courtyard. Awesome. I'm gonna go back to shaded view. I am going to use the Boolean tool in order to have this cut out from the actual building itself. But before that, we're gonna need to cap this to make it a solid. And we're just gonna select what we need to cut from and then type Boolean difference and then what we want to cut away. Now I have copy on, so we're just gonna delete this. But there we go. This will be our third step in creating our building. Now, once we have all 3 of these steps, we need to make sure to set an angle in which our diagram is going to be placed. So you obviously want an angle where you can show your concept very clearly and you can see everything that is going on in your design site. Now, for me, I think this is a pretty good angle for what we're trying to show. The cut here and the courtyard here. Very, very pronounced. So we're just gonna go ahead and save this angle in case we need it for anything in the future. In order to do that, we go into view, set view, and then we're gonna hit name the views. This window will pop up with the name views, and we're just gonna save this view as, let's say, diagram 1. Okay. Now we always have this as an option, so we can always go back here, and if we move the camera around like this, we can always go back to the same view. Alright, now that we have our view set, we're gonna go ahead and make these lines for our design site. Now, it's a good idea to actually have the arrows in as well. So if we want an arrow pointing in right here to where we push the build back a little bit and to have this little slant, it's easier to have the arrow done here in Rhino than it is in Illustrator. It is doable in Illustrator, and fairly it's not that hard, but I just like to have it done in Rhino here before we make the 2D lines. So for this diagram, maybe we want an arrow pointing right here and an arrow pointing towards the courtyard. So we're gonna go back to top. Now you can import an arrow. I just wouldn't really bother. It's way faster to just draw something like this and then kind of just trim. And we're gonna mirror this part to make our arrow. Oh, that's a little bit ugly. Move this back here a little bit. And mirror that. Okay, that looks way better. This can be our arrow. We're going to join that. And I'm going to go back. back here, and one arrow here pointing towards the diagonal and one arrow here pointing down at the courtyard. That's what we want. So we're gonna go ahead and just drag this over. Oh. Actually, it's a good idea to just make a copy so we have a nice flat arrow for when we use it next time. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy it, rotate it like that, and we're just gonna give it a little tilt and scale it down just so it's pointing at where we want it to point. Move it to the center here and upward. Right, okay. And we're gonna use another one. Make that point downwards like this. Make sure that it's right in the center, right here. Very nice. And this one can also be just a little bit smaller as well. Oh, that looks really off. Move it to the side just so it looks to the center. Okay, let's go back to our view to see what this looks like. Oh, wrong button. Set views, diagram 1. Awesome. So those are the two arrows that we really need for this. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. And let's get going on to making the 2D lines for this drawing here. Let's start with step 1. So I know this arrow goes with step 3. So we're just gonna move it over out of the way, say 2,000 units. We're gonna move step 1 all the way back. And we're just gonna move this arrow along with step 2. Nope, it's 3,000. Awesome. Now we're gonna go into our view. And we're gonna just start off by doing make 2D. Leave everything as it is. We're gonna check on scene silhouette as well as group output. Alright, now if we go over to top view, this is our nice little diagram. Just gonna move it out of the way. Move on to second step. Oh, did not mean to move that. Okay, move this out of the way. Second step. 3,000. And we're going to make this 2D as well. Nice. We even have the arrow on there. Go back here. Actually gonna group these two. And finally for step 3. Oh, wrong one. I'm gonna have to do negative 2,000. And make 2D. Alright, so these 3 are our diagrams steps, so 1, 2, and 3. And if we go back to our diagram here, we're just gonna make a little base photo or image that we're gonna have to put these lines onto. And how Big does this is really, really simple. All you have to do is go down to the scroll right here, go into Arctic, and all we have to do is kind of just save this image. We're gonna ungroup and just hide the arrow for now. You might want to hide these two as well. Okay, and then all we're gonna do is view capture to file. It's gonna bring up this window. We want it on a transparent background. You can have resolution however you like. And we're just going to save it wherever you want to save it. And we're going to do that for every single step. So we're gonna move step 2 back and step 1 back. And yeah. All right, now that we have all 3 of our diagrams exported to a file, we're going to go back to our line drawing, highlight all of our lines, go to file. Actually, before we do that, we know that these arrows are going to be colored in, and there's some lines intersecting, so we're just going to fix that in Rhino right now. Cut these lines out. Very nice. Once they're cleaned up, highlight everything, go to File, Export Selected, and we are going to export them as an Adobe Illustrator file. So let's title this Diagram Lines, and we're just gonna save that. Doesn't really matter what this is because we're gonna match it up with our base drawing. So anything that you like, and see you guys in Illustrator. Alright, so now that we're in Illustrator, just make sure everybody has the different layers in here. I believe this is a silhouette layer. So I'm gonna change this to silhouette. Middle here is just our lines layer. And over here should be our arrow. Awesome. Arrow. Okay, I'm going to create 3 different artboards for this because of our 3 different steps. And just drag these over. Awesome. Now we can begin importing our background images. Now we can simply just drag and drop step 1, step 2, and then step 3. Awesome. Now it's better if we just make a layer for all of these. So I'm going to do that. Call this layer background images. And select all 3 of these, move them into our background images, and I'm going to drag it all the way to the bottom. So we're going to try to make these the same size. So line it up to the top corner and then hold shift when you drag or scale. Sorry. And do this for all 3. Nice, now they're in the same spot. And we're gonna go ahead and lock the background layer. So now what we have to do is have these lines match up with our drawings. Now we're gonna have to manipulate the size a little bit. So I'm gonna highlight all of these just to make the process a little bit faster. And we're gonna try to make one of these around the same size, just so all 3 of these can all be scaled at the same time. Still a little bit too big. Okay, that looks to be about right. Now we can go in and kind of manipulate all of these by themselves. I am holding shift while I'm doing this. Nice, that can be step 1. And then this one, ooh, that fit pretty well. Maybe on the top here, it's not, there we go, oh. Okay. And then our last one. Drag it over. Same thing, we want to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, very nice. I'm going to highlight all of these and we are going to make the color black. Oh, this one, we need it black, and we're gonna make it a little bit thicker. So already we can see that this building by itself already stands out from everything around it, which is exactly what we want because that's the focus of our design. Now if we want to add in color, say to step 2 and 3, then all we have to do is highlight and go over to the paint bucket tool, which is over here. You can also click K. And we're just gonna click everything that's selected here. For this one, we can use red for the arrow. And let's use a nice yellow for our actual site. A nice McDonald's theme here. Same thing with our step 3. We can use K, click on what we want to have paint bucketed. And let's just eyedropper these colors. Press K, very nice. Again, eyedropper that color. Press K. And for these 2 courtyards. Now this one's gonna be a little bit darker, so let's adjust that. And there we go. Last thing you might want to do is add in some text. So we're gonna create a new layer, call it the text layer, and make it on top of everything here. And so for example, this one we can type 3, creation of central courtyard, something like that. And we can change it to a different font, to our Futura, maybe 24. And we can have something like this on the top of every single one of our steps. Okay, and that's about it. So these are some really nice looking diagrams. Really simple, but they get straight to the point. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video.